So hi, Reed. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me here.
I was really excited. You're like pretty awesome. I was really excited to have you as a guest on the show today. And the first thing we ask you guys to do is to share your story of hope with everyone that's listening today. So do you want to do that for us?
Sure. Thanks so much, Jana. It's a real pleasure to do that. And I hope that we can inspire some folks and give them some hope because you can change. And I'll just tell you quickly, back in the 90s, I was in the environmental law business. So I was saving the planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees, what have you. And I started to notice how harsh the environment really was and all of these things, the flora and fauna of our planet, which we love so dearly. And I turned my attention way back then, over 20 years ago, to, well, what is that environment doing to people, including me? What is it doing to us? So it's fine to be an environmentalist and all that great work we were doing and stuff. But I went to work at this clinic, and you'll be amazed that, uh, I was running the place as a businessman, but the owner took me to she was getting her diplomat in nutrition and said I could go along for the ride. And I had a real big interest in that anyway. So this is amazing. She let me work on her patients between my classes. And I just absolutely fell in love with the clinical side of business, of that business, wellness. It was a wellness center in Southern California. And I got to work on her patients between my nutrition classes. And what amazed me, it just amazed me, that almost everybody walking in the door had already seen four, six, eight, 10 practitioners already and wasn't well yet. And that just kind of blew my mind. I mean, I'd always been healthy. I didn't have any particular challenges at the time, and thought, gee, what's wrong with you? You know, how could you have been to all these people and spend all this money, you might add? So someone made a lot of money on these people and hadn't gotten them well, and I thought that was a ripoff. So, with the law background, I had kind of a consumer advocate position of, I don't want anyone to spend any money that they don't have to. And if you're not getting well, someone has ripped you off. Now, I didn't realize the real story. But I determined at that point that I would be the last person they needed to see to get well. Remember, I'm in charge of a wellness center. I have doctors, chiropractic, acupuncture, alternative nutrition, everything at my disposal. And it turned out to be not quite so easy. But over a long period of time, and I'm talking close to 10 years, I also got very lucky. I was able to run lab work on people. So I ran thousands and thousands of lab tests on thousands of people. At the time, this was considered alternative medicine. It was before integrative medicine or complementary medicine. There was no functional medicine at the time. It was just kind of normal or standard medicine and quackery is the way it was looked at. But anyway, we ran thousands of labs on thousands of people, and I determined some patterns that were very helpful, just these really helpful things to look for in almost regardless of what someone's condition was, whether it was chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and bone density problems or hormonal problems, menopause, perimenopause, all the different things. I found some patterns. I ran these thousands of labs and I recognized these patterns and I put that into just an investigative system, a step by step. Well, let's rule out or just look at the healing opportunities here, 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 and here. And then, of course, because I wasn't a physician, and I'm going to conclude in a moment and say that because I wasn't a physician and I really wasn't interested in just treating the symptoms, I really was on this quest to find out what were the true underlying causes and conditions. And I ran those thousands of labs and I recognized those patterns. Then I had to apply general principles of health building. No prescriptions, no, and I didn't want to just sell supplements that I considered, again, kind of a ripoff. So we really determined the lifestyle, the epigenetic factors, the environmental factors, of course, that had to be modified, and came up with another system, another pattern I recognize that, well, people get well when you look at these things, and they get well, and you recognize the healing opportunities there. And then if they follow this pattern, they seem to get well. And even when they've had seriously diagnosed conditions, they just got well. They symptoms went away, their problems went away, unless there was some true underlying, you know, vital void in metabolism or something like that. So, so that's kind of my story, and I would just want to tell people that um, what ended up happening is I started teaching my methodology. We've now trained 3,000 practitioners in 50 countries to follow, again, the system of looking at patterns and getting people to behave themselves. Uh, I always say if you behaved yourself into a problem, and most times today's chronic stress related conditions, we've lived into it, well, we can reverse that. You can just all be reversed and live back out of it.
You're kind of like a wellness engineer.
Yeah, that's a good term for it. You could say that. They call it all kinds of things. In
Well,
a sense, I'm just a health coach. Yeah.
I would love to know more about how that works and what you guys do at your clinic.
You know, I don't even use a clinic anymore because as I started lecturing farther and farther away from the office, you know, I got to travel, I got asked to go speak here and there and everywhere. And I decided that you know, why bother driving all the way to the office when we could just work through, at the time it was the phone. I mean, when I was developing this, Jana, it was like you had a pager. The phone was on your desk back at the office. And now, of course, with all the conveniences, here we are doing this Zoom call live, face to face. It's amazing what you do now. But we invented distance coaching, or at the time it was called telemedicine, which was pretty taboo back then. But we've been doing it for 20 years. Telemedicine. You don't need an office. You can practice our type of health coaching virtually. Just don't have to leave your home.
You're definitely talking my language. I'm a huge fan of being able to come to my computer and type in a few key things and extend my reach globally to find those answers, which is phenomenal, and not leave my home, right?
Look what you're doing. I'm in my home right now,
Awesome.
and and you can work, you know, the hours you want. We work very hard, of course, and we do have to have discipline. But I work my own hours. I get to spend a couple hours a day outside on my property. I do get up very early. I go to bed very early, but you know, I kind of live, walk my talk as much as I can.
So you mentioned epigenetics, and I'm a huge fan of epigenetics. I just love science, and I love that everyone is so unique. So when you go to a doctor's, they're literally putting you in with the masses, right? And if this is what one person should look like, then and you're a little different, you're in with the masses. So I did epigenetics last year, and I was so fascinated to find out things I pretty much already knew. But I mean, it made sense to me when I started looking into it. And I was one of those people who went to multiple doctors with no answer, and realized that I really had the answer inside me. Like you said, it's creating those changes in your life, and you know, going back to when you were healthy and living that lifestyle.
Yes. Well, epigenetics is everything pretty much. Remember, I started with studying the environment, and it has an epigenetic effect on every cell, tissue, organ, and system in the body. So I learned that how we live has an effect on every cell, tissue, organ, and system in the body too. So how you eat, it's not a specific treatment for any one thing. It's a non-specific treatment for everything. You know, eating the right foods for a person in the right combinations. We do macronutrient ratios and things like that. It's actually pretty simple. And we remove from the diet foods that are irritating, causing inflammation or upsetting the immune system in some way. So we do a lot of food sensitivity testing, but the diet can influence the health, the function, the amount of energy being produced in every cell in the body. And cells don't have to be taught what their job is. You know, we use the innate intelligence. We just call it the innate, and that is what's behind every cell knowing its job, and that cell knows what kind of tissue it's in, and that tissue knows what kind of organ it's in, and that organ knows what part of the system that it's in, and it's really quite remarkable. So we just use that and epigenetic factors like diet, rest, exercise, of course. Reducing stress is really important, and stress is ubiquitous. And there's that environmental stress, and the mental emotional stress, and the physical trauma and stress, existential angst. There's lots of different types of stress. We get pretty good at sorting that out. And
So
then, of
I
course, supplements can be used too. And I don't sell my own brand, but I know a few things about them.
so I know a lot of people who are listening are going to be thinking, how is that blood test and those kind of markers that you're looking at any different than when I go to the doctors and they say everything's fine?
Well, sure. The first thing is, out there, raise your hand if you've ever been to a physician or know someone who was told nothing's wrong, that your blood work looks fine, and that everything looks normal. So what does that mean? Your problems are just all in your head. You made them up. Your tiredness, your fatigue, all you're doing. Oh, you're fine. Well, you're not fine. You know it, and in our world, we know it too. There's some sort of, it's called subclinical. So it hasn't showed up in that doctor's blood work yet. But there is something wrong. Any symptom or sign, anything about the way you look or feel that you don't like, there probably is an underlying condition, and it doesn't have to show up on normal blood work. And so we don't use it much. Again, you'd have to be, half dead almost for anything there to show up, or on your way somewhere. So we use other labs besides blood. We'll use saliva, urine, stool, and blood work that you typically won't find in a standard doctor's office.
So,
And it's remarkably how revealing it is. I'll just throw this in there, and you know this well yourself because you're a holistic practitioner. We look for healing opportunities. These are not medical diagnoses. Your hormones can be balanced, more balanced. Your immune system could be more active or less active. Your digestion can be much improved. In many cases, people just aren't really getting all the nutrients out of their food. And that's if they're eating good food. And so the same thing with detoxification. Now, in order for that to show up on a doctor's blood test, you literally have to be turning yellow, but there's a lot that happens before you turn yellow that indicates that your detoxification systems aren't working very well. That could show up as any number of things.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about the teaching aspect. Like you teaching, it says 2,500 trainees or graduates in 50 countries. I think that is phenomenal because I'm all about educating. We're always growing. We're always learning. When I look back at what medicine looked like 100 years ago and where we're at now, wow, it's huge. But where we're going is even bigger. So I love that you're teaching this and it's becoming more common practice. What kind of experts are you teaching, or what kind of physicians are you teaching? Are they physicians? Are they just coaches?
It's a great question, and of course we take on all comers. If someone, and I was interviewed by a university once to see if they wanted to take on some of our curriculum, which is very robust. It's really robust. It's not for everybody. So people with some college, like in physicians, we have people with master's degree and PhDs. They, by the way, love the practicality of it. It isn't just anatomy and physiology and biochemistry. There's plenty of that, but it's the practical application of it. What I teach is what I learned and did in an office, like day in and day out, seeing Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones face to face in the office. So it's not something I learned at, functional medicine academy over the weekend or 10 weekends. It was learned running thousands of labs on thousands of people over, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of weekends, if you will. And so, or weekdays, whatever you have. So it was just learned a different way, and it's taught a different way. It's just incredibly practical. And I was asked by this university, what are my prerequisites? And I said, I don't have a lot of prerequisites. Matter of fact, anyone who wants to help other people and is willing to walk the talk is welcome to take the course. Now, they didn't like that. They thought there ought to be this and that. I said, why would, if Mrs. Smith, who has 5 kids and 8 grandkids, wants to take my course just so she can learn to take care of her family, why would I not accept her into my course? And so it's that kind of a thing that's very open. With that, you know, there is anatomy, physiology, biochemistry. You got to be ready for, you know, college level and above type of work, you know. But I'm a very plain spoken person. One of my talents, this is from my law background, is research and writing and putting things into plain language, and being able to explain it to, you know. Plus, I spent almost 10 years in an office as a patient educator, so I learned to teach it all in hopefully less than 6-syllable words.
I love what you're doing. And I love that you've opened your doors to teach anyone who's willing to learn, because that is where we're moving, right? If we can take care of ourselves at home by doing what's best for us, it's going to keep us out of the doors of doctors for much longer.
Oh yeah, yes. So this is stuff that everyone needs to know. And I grew up real luckily. My mother was quite an educated woman, and even 60 plus years ago was doing sort of natural things. And my grandfathers both grew their own food, and just there's a way of the past that seems to be circling back around. You know, people are less likely to just grab food that's all in bags and boxes. You know, they want real food, and they know the effect and the differences. And a lot of disease comes from eating wrong and not sleeping and not exercising, and from the ubiquitous number of stressors or ubiquitous levels of stress that come in so many different shapes and sizes.
So I was looking at the bio that I read in for you, and it says that you're a certified nutritional therapist, and that you are an expert in functional lab testing, which we just went over, and holistic lifestyle medicine. Do you want to go in a little bit on what you mean by holistic lifestyle medicine? Because we were just looking up what Siri says holistic is, and I guess it's kind of broad, but it doesn't really sound like it's what I relate to holistic medicine as. So do you want to like talk a little bit about what you do with the holistic lifestyle medicine?
Well, it's just a catchphrase, really. You know, there's this idea again of when I started off, there was standard medicine and quackery. If you didn't practice standard medicine, if you were even chiropractors were called witch doctors, and acupuncturists were considered weird Oriental, some strange thing, you know. And even when I was practicing, you know, for the next like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, my sister who teaches nursing in Ohio said, well, they only do that in California, as if it was some weird thing, you know. So there's been an awakening, if you will. There's understanding that we get results, and everyone loves results. So the eyes and the ears have opened up. People are a little more accepting, and that idea of you know, standard medicine versus everything else. It became, you know, there was alternative medicine, and again, some people called that pseudoscience and everything. But alternative became complementary. Complementary became integrative. Integrative became functional medicine. And now you know, you have these leaders, great thought leaders in the area, and who are very also scientifically based, and they're just coming up with new names like lifestyle medicine. And so I just threw the word holistic on top of it because it is holistic. It means you have to consider the whole person, including how they think and you know, how they perceive this idea of the innate intelligence and the source of that. And so the idea of spirituality probably comes in sooner or later. And you've got holistic, just meaning encompassing every aspect of a person, self-awareness, and on and on.
Well, I love the journey and the way you just put it out there, because that is so true. That is the growth of it and how it has come around full circle. because it's true. My grandmother, I remember when we had a cold, she still would put that mustard compost on our chest with herbs and vinegar.
Yeah.
We had apple cider vinegar for colds. Like you took a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and all that stuff is coming back around. And it's not that it's coming back around as we thought we found something better than what nature had already given us,
Mm.
but we didn't have something better. As a matter of fact, we find that in almost all pharmaceuticals, there is going to be a thread linking back to nature's what it's already given us.
Yeah, absolutely. Most drugs are developed out of some natural thing, but they're patented so that they can make extra money on it. You can't patent, let's say vitamin C, for instance, or what the goodness that's in nature, and so you have to change it. Drugs are actually called new molecular entities. You can't get a patent and charge zillions of dollars for something that you don't have a patent on. So they create new molecular entities, and that's what drugs are. When when Einstein, pardon me, Thomas Edison, a great inventor who had 2,000 patents, and there's almost nothing we do in life right now that doesn't have some connection to Thomas Edison's inventions, including things like electricity and movies and all kinds of things, including tattoo machines. He invented all this stuff. But he said something in 1903 that was wrong. He was absolutely wrong on his prediction that the doctor of the future would give no medicine, but would interest his patient instead in diet, care of the human frame, and in the cause and prevention of disease. That's the quote, word for word. And he was wrong because in 1903, when he said that, there was just only a few handfuls of drugs. And even 20 years later, 30 years later, when they created the FDA, there was only maybe 20 drug companies. Today, there's about 90 drug companies holding over 1,500 new molecular entity patents. And everyone kind of knows that, like most senior people in the U.S. are on at least 5 or 6 different medications and things. So he was wrong. The doctor of the future is given plenty of medicine and is not interesting his patient in diet and care of the human frame and the cause and prevention of disease. That's up to us. The sort of I'm just going to go back and say the alternative type of practitioner. So that's who we attract to our course. It could be a physician, chiropractor, acupuncturist. It's more likely nutritionists and personal trainers and PAs and nurses and nurse practitioners. Huge now. Nurses are jumping in like crazy because they want to do some good in the world too. We all want to do some good in the world, and some of us are seeing to it. And so we just keep kind of working away at it, teaching and seeing where it goes.
I think it's funny that there are still so many people in the world that have no idea what holistic or natural medicine is. And my husband is a veterinarian, so he was schooled in pharmaceuticals. And he calls my sort of voodooism, he calls it alternative. It's alternative. I'm like, no, you're alternative. We've been around for hundreds of years. And what, pharmaceuticals have been out 100 years.
Funny.
And so you're the alternative. But having said that, I was in my 50s
Yeah.
when I sat at my computer typing in the words, desperate for health answers, looking for something because pharmaceuticals had
Oh
failed
my.
me. And so I know there are other people out there that have no idea that it is nutrition. It's encompassing of the soul, of the spirit, of the mind, of stress, of sleep. There's so much encompassing what affects our bodies. And intuitively, when we go to the doctor and they say there's something wrong, intuitively, we know something's not right. And then pretty soon it becomes symptomatic. Our body starts screaming a little louder. And then pretty soon that symptomatic becomes full blown, whatever it is. And so there's a way when it becomes intuitive to listen, react, and adjust whatever's going on in your body, even if that means getting a blood work. What's different this right now that wasn't going on 6 months ago that's making me feel this way? And it sounds to me a lot like that is kind of what you're doing. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is holistic. It does encompass the mind, body, and spirit. And again, my skill was working really hard just the work ethic was unbelievable. People say to me, well, how did you run thousands and thousands of labs on thousands and thousands of people? And I just say, because I didn't know you couldn't. I didn't know no one worked that hard and was that motivated or dedicated to doing it. I just was a freak for more labs, more people, more people. I'm learning and I'm helping, and it's creating, it's working towards something. And so when I finally, because my mission from the beginning, remember I was going to be the last person that they needed to see, but on the wall we wrote, to educate as many people as possible how to get well and stay well naturally, so that they in turn could teach others. So how to educate as many people as possible how to get well. And so I realized after almost 10 years that I could only serve so many people. I was out lecturing, 3, 4 nights a month. I was doing health screenings twice a week for 5 years. I did bone density screenings and all these different kinds of things, just reaching thousands of people, all in Southern California, around San Diego area. And someone just put the idea in my head, you should be teaching other practitioners. If you want to help as many people as possible, teach others to do it. And I'm a slow learner, but I cut on.
When you teach
That'd be a good
others,
idea.
when you teach others, you're putting that impact out into the world for even when we're gone, right? That change is going to go out into the world on how they now view health issues or wellness issues. And so I love that you've taken it that step.
Uh, I'm not the only one. I mean, I have to say that I did all that work, but I had good mentorship too. There's other people, Dr. Bill Timmons was the guy who created some of the lab work that we were using, and it was called lab developed testing. And so it was giving us the healing opportunities that we were most interested in, that was having a lot of effect on a person. But they just went out of business. Unfortunately, people die and kids don't want to run the bit, whatever. So they went out of business. To this day, we struggle to find some of these markers, some of these things that we were looking for. Now I've had to find them because I'm teaching and I have a lot of students and a lot of people depending on me. So it's a never-ending search, and I'm working as hard today as I did 20 years ago. I'm still loving it. I still, some things have changed. I've gotten older for that happens no matter what. But the energy and the enthusiasm and the desire to be of service, and that, matter of fact, it's even gotten bigger. Of course, the vision now is to have more of a worldwide impact on the health of the planet through this. I don't know if you want to call it an army or tribe or whatever, but I've sort of deputized an awful lot of people who are loving it. They're loving it because now they're independent health coaches and practitioners who can go out and do a lot of good in the world. And again, the only prerequisites we have, you got to want to help people and you got to be willing to walk the talk.
Well, Reed, how can people connect with you if they want to learn more? Or say they're a practitioner. Like I have 2 daughters that are doctors of natural medicine, and they would love to know more about this. But if they really want to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing and become educated in this process, how do they connect with you?
Well, it's really simple, and we're going to use your name, part of it, Jana Short. And so if you go to fdn.today/short, you will find us and what we do. So it's FDN, that stands for Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, which is hard to spell, so we just say fdn.today/short. And that's your avenue to more about what we do. And there is hope, for sure.
Well, I would definitely recommend all of you go there, because here's the thing. I'm constantly bettering myself, learning more, expanding. And when I think I'm there, I want to push out and learn more, because there's so much more that you can learn, especially if you want to show up and serve and create that feeling of hope and give people the answers they need. There's always more that we can be doing to show up and serve better. I love what you're doing, Reed. I think you are amazing. I love that you're educating others to go out and do what you're doing, and you're really creating hope in the world. So thank you so much for being on our podcast.
My pleasure. Anytime.